Bonjour, everyone. How are you all doing? Welcome to the stream, people. How are we doing? Audio level, make sure that's fine. Yep, I can hit, yep, lovely. Loud and clear, boom. Beautiful. How are we doing, everyone? How are we doing? Are we all finding our Monday blues, anyone? Hello, Louis. Hello, Lotta. Harishi, Kieran, good to see you, mate. Nick, Elena, Kiarash, Mariana. Obviously, Hannah's in the chat, shouting the 100k. Thank you, everyone, for 100k again. That's just still ludicrous. Hello, everyone. Look at that. Oh, love it. Love it, people. How are we all doing? How are we all doing? Obviously today, we're going to be talking about what happened yesterday at Portugal. Portimao. First and foremost, I thought it was a great race. I thought it was a banger. Portimao, 100%, get that back on the calendar, please. Or not back on the calendar, permanently. I thought it was sick. I thought it was well good. Did we all enjoy it? What did we think? What did we think? All in all, for the race as a whole, what did we think? Yeah, the start was mad. Obviously, the conditions kind of came into that a little bit. Oh, I'm very bright, aren't I? Let me just lower that a little bit. There we go, lovely. 7 out of 8. I thought it was good. I thought it was really good. I think that track's got a lot of potential. You know, we saw that first corner, which typically, you know, at the end of a long straight, and the DRS section, maybe it was a bit too... But at the end of the day, we also saw battling within the track, not as often, but obviously we'll get onto that as we talk about it. I thought it was a really good race. You know, you can't expect every single race to be, you know, a Germany 2019, can you? Come on, like... It's motor racing at the end of the day, and I thought it was really good. I thought it was solid, and I think, like I say, hello Beth, good to see. Hello Winchy. Hello Paige, welcome. Yeah, I thought it was really good. That's my summary of the situation. But let's get on to the results, shall we? Lewis Hamilton, 92 wins, the most of all time. Don't get it twisted. Lewis is, without shadow of a doubt, one of the greatest to ever do it. I feel like, to be honest, it's pointless trying to make an argument that he's the best of all time. It's pointless trying to make an argument that anyone's the best of all time. Because, you know, they're all in different generations. You're never going to be able to directly compare Lewis at his prime to Seb at his prime, to Michael at his prime, to Ayrton at his prime, to Clark at his prime, to Fangio at his prime. I could go on. It's impossible. So you can always say what you think, but no one can say it with it. So Lewis is one of the best of all time, of course. But yeah, 92 wins. Another one's yesterday. Took him over. Lewis doing Lewis things, what can I say? Valtteri P2. Again, we'll get on to how things went very well and then not very well. And, I mean, look, it's still a P2 at the end of the day, but that's the minimum expectation, isn't it, from Bottas? Verstappen, from Leclerc, P4. Very impressive. Gasly, P5. Sainz, P6. Perez, P7. Ocon, P8. Ricciardo, P9. And Vettel, P10. Now... got my driver of the day and my L of the day at the bottom. Now, obviously, for both, there were a lot of people up for contention. Does my Pierre Gasly bias, because I do love Pierre, and I particularly root for Pierre above most drivers, does that play a factor? Probably. Again, I'm first to admit. Listen, we've all got biases. Just some people more than others, you know what I mean? Obviously, there's an argument for Charles, for sure. I mean, that Ferrari, I think that's definitely... The car's made a step forward. I mean, it's a quality result for him. There's an argument for Kimi as well. We'll talk about his start, which is just a madness, and he was so unlucky to be out the points in the end. And then obviously L of the day, I've gone for Stroll. Alex, like the chat is saying, yes, okay, calm down everyone. Yes, of course Alex was up there, but I think Stroll had a worse race than Alex just because of the incidents. Like he had the incident with Norris, and then he got a time penalty as well. It's just a bit But, I mean, obviously Alex was in contention for that as well. Kvyat, I reckon, as well, was down there because he had a very... When you look at where Pierre finished and then where Kvyat was, and then Kvyat got a time penalty, he had a very poor race. Also, driver of the day up there for Perez. Perez should have been up there, I think, as well. Like, yes, he finished lower than he started, but considering he got punted in what was a racing incident, if anything, slightly more Max's fault, if you ask me. For him to come back the way he did, quality. And look, people argue about the Lance. Will argue about the Lance bloody Norris. I couldn't think of his name. The Lance Lando incident all the time. But yeah. Again, there's numerous people up for it, but I've got to pick one at the end of the day. One for each. So, let's talk about the race. Broken it down. Now, I think credit to Bottas at the start, right? Because I could see what Bottas was doing. I could see what he was doing. You got the little warm-up lap, right? Processionary warm-up lap before everyone lines up in their grid slots and then lights out and away we go. And I could see, like, down that, when they were getting to the final straight, Bottas backed way off and gave Lewis loads of space. Which, obviously what that does is means that Lewis has to wait longer in his grid box to be able to pull away, right? Bottas gave Lewis loads of space. You can see he gave him loads of space. And then, obviously, the race started. They were both on mediums, which obviously took longer to heat up. And Bottas capitalised. He made the most of it. And I think he deserves credit for not only... Like, I think he manifested that situation to an extent. He definitely had a part to play in that. I definitely think that. Because that would have added... I think that added seconds, possibly. At least... I reckon that added at least 2 seconds compared to what it would normally. So, credit to Bottas. Unfortunately, it didn't work out for him in the end because Lewis is Lewis and Bottas is not Lewis at the end of the day. But I just thought Bottas deserved a little bit of credit there because I know people were slating him and ultimately it was disappointing for him the way it turned out. But I think he deserved... Oh, thank you, Kenny Rifke, as well for joining Friends of Tomo. Appreciate it. And don't worry, everyone. We'll talk about Stroll versus Norris. You can see it's in the list. Look, it's here. It's here. There you go. Look at that. Right there. All right. On to the next. Verstappen versus Perez. So, of course, Perez had a great start. He qualified P5, didn't he? Verstappen was P3, and they were both on softs, I think. I can't remember off the top of my head, to be honest. But, listen. I don't personally get this whole... If it's on the first lap, it has to be a racing incident. I don't know. What do you think? Let me know in the comments, right? If you think that an incident shouldn't be penalised because it's in the first lap, type yes. So as it is currently, they're not penalised as much if it's first lap. If you don't agree, like me, I don't think that should be a thing personally. Type no. just generally, I'm not talking about this incident specifically, but we all know that it's pretty split. I'm seeing probably slightly more nose. Look, obviously, I understand, there's more chance on the first lap for cars to come together. I get it. But ultimately, if it wasn't for Perez being an absolute don, that would have completely buggered his race, right? And I don't know. For me, Max is more at fault for that first one. I don't think it's a straight up stonewall penalty. I don't know. I wouldn't like to make that call, honestly, if I was in that position. Oh, thank you, Freddie, for the $4.99, by the way, pal. Thank you, mate. Appreciate that. And Tejas for the 40. I'm sorry, I don't know the currency, but thank you for that. Prefer Checo or Gasly for second Red Bull seat in 2020. I'll get to that. Don't you worry. In fact, actually, to respond directly to your message, Tejas, I don't think either of them will be in the Red Bull next year. But we'll discuss in a minute. I mean, it's pretty obvious who I think will be in it. But yeah, so obviously it was harsh. It was tight. I don't think Max went in there. He lost a bit of momentum, went around the corner, and obviously as it's coming uphill, and he's kind of cresting and he's understeered a little bit. I do think Max was more at fault. It was unfortunate for Sergio, but I think that's Sergio's putting himself in the shop window, isn't he? I feel like, if anything, Sergio's performances have stepped up since it was announced he's out of Racing Point. He's got a point to prove, you know what I mean? And I think good for him. Fair play, Sergio. And Max, Max closed out the P3 as you'd expect him to. Didn't really, obviously had the incident with Stroll in practice, which was drama. But anyway, Screen 3, Sainz. Wow, that was exciting at the start, wasn't it? Wasn't that mad? All of a sudden, he not only overtook Lewis, because Lewis was going so slow, because obviously he just had no heat in the tyres, because again, I think Valtteri held up things a little bit more, which just gave Lewis a little bit less heat in those tyres, which I think made a lot of difference, if you ask me. And then Bottas goes past Hamilton, and then Sainz goes past Hamilton, and then Sainz goes past Bottas. That was mad. And even Lando was right up there as well. I mean, those two McLarens were so switched on at the start, both on softs, both able to retain decent heat in their tyres. That start was fire, man. That start was crazy. Obviously, things slowly returned to a sense of normality, but I like to think that's a kind of a little window into what the future could possibly be with the new regulations and McLaren closing that gap. It was good to see. And ultimately, Carlos finished, P6 in the end, didn't he? And which is a very solid result, obviously, considering what could have been potentially if McLaren don't seem to have made the steps forward that Renault and Racing Point have, even though they did finish above the Renaults today. I think Ferrari have made a step forward again with their car. The fact that both Ferraris were in the points, which is pretty much a first this year, I think. I don't know, there might be another year, but yeah, McLaren's look good, but I think kind of for that third place in the constructors is going to be mad tight. But yeah, credit to Carlos. He knows how to drive in these kind of dodgy conditions. His old man was a rally driver, wasn't he? And he talked about that. Sainz is really good at starts and really good in the rain, and that's exactly what a brand new track, difficult conditions, greasy track. I'm not surprised Carlos made the moves he did, because Carlos is, in those conditions, he's one of the very, very best. But yeah. On to the next. Kimi. If you haven't seen, anyone who hasn't seen Kimi's first lap, go on to the Formula One YouTube channel. Just do it now if you want, or just open it up in another tab and watch it later. Kimi Räikkönen. Wow. Again, that ability to maximise performance in tricky conditions. Soft tyres obviously started towards the back of the grid, which meant there was less time stationary for Kimi, which worked in his favour as well. Because again, you look at Lewis, again, stationary for a long time on medium tyres that are harder to... I'm not surprised that he struggled off the start, in hindsight. But yeah, Kimi was just on his job, mate. Like, that was sick. That was so, like, seeing him cut through the field. I was like, has he gained like 10, literally like 10 positions, maybe 11 on like the first lap? I mean, he's just cutting through everyone. He just had confidence where others didn't. You know what I mean? I mean, we talk about that's what's great about, you know, when it's wet, and it wasn't. I mean, it was a little bit damp. But when the conditions are messed up, it truly does kind of. Yes, of course, the Mercedes still has a slight advantage, but the size of that advantage, it tightens the whole field up, and it becomes much more about actual driver kind of ability and talent. And obviously, like, again, I'm saying like Lewis is one of the best, and he fell back. But again, medium tyres. As the race pans out, if you look at a whole race, you know, a long wet race where no one DNFs, I think that would give the closest kind of relation to actual driver ability in direct comparison, if you see what I mean. I'm kind of blabbing a little bit. But yeah, Kimi was unreal, man. Kimi was unreal. And it looks like I don't know if he's going to stay next year. He's definitely still got it. It looks like rumours are suggesting that Alfa Romeo's team aren't going to change. They're going to keep Gio and Kimi. I get that with Kimi. I'm surprised if they do keep Giovinazzi, to be honest, because I just think someone like Eilert or Schwartzman, obviously Schumacher looks like he's probably going to Haas. That's again what the rumour mill's spitting out at the minute. But yeah, we'll see. Ultimately, I've said it before, I say it again, I think the relationship between Haas and Ferrari is much closer than that between Alfa Romeo and Ferrari. So I think Schumacher getting a Haas seat makes more sense, and maybe Alfa were just like, no, actually, we want Giovinazzi, which, up to them at the end of the day, isn't it, really? But anyway, Leclerc, I think shout out to Charles. Charles deserves a shout out. Qualified P4, finished P4 in a Ferrari that's been an absolute dog this year. I definitely think that car's moved forward for both drivers, because again, Seb managed to get in the points as well. I mean, Seb was very honest after that he's just not operating at the level Charles is at the minute. Possibly, look, listen, it's impossible for us to know how much of that is Ferrari prioritising Charles, how much of that is... I think it's a combination of factors. I think Charles gets slight strategy preference. I think he's way more confident than Sebastian is at the minute. And Charles is really, really talented. Like, one of the very best. And I think, you know, they're all just humans at the end of the day. And when you're confident, like Pierre Gasly at Red Bull last year, you know, doing as bad as Alex is at the minute. Everyone who's, I'm not being funny, everyone who's calling for Alex's head now, were you calling for Gasly's head last year? Because they were performing as bad. You know what I mean? Like, but it just goes to show having a bit of confidence and having a car that you feel comfortable in and therefore confident in can make a world of difference, you know? Mad. But I feel like, and I'm sidetracking onto Seb here, but I do feel like that Aston Martin, the way the Racing Point is set up, I feel like that's going to be more to Seb's liking. I can't back that up with any facts or knowledge. I just feel like that's how it's going to go. But we'll see anyway. But yeah, Charles, like, massive credit. Again, he qualified P4. He fell down the order at Nürburgring after qualifying P4. But this week, he didn't. Obviously, maybe if Perez hadn't got shunted, Perez probably would have got P4. But Charles, credit where credit's due. He kept himself... He had a pretty quiet race, actually, wasn't it, really, in the end? Everyone had a bit of a mad first lap. But it was just... Charles just doing his job, mate. Charles is quality. I consider Charles to be top 4 drivers, 100%. talent-wise, 100%. Charles is different gravy. I've said it, haven't I? Different gravy. There's my catchphrase. Stroll versus Norris. Right. Talk about Lance versus Lando. Come on then, chat. If you think it was Stroll's fault, type Stroll. If you think it was Lando's fault, type Norris. Come on, chat. What do you think? I feel like the consensus is that it's Stroll's fault. And obviously, those who... I mean, it's pretty much all Stroll. Stroll. Yep. Yep. A lot. Yeah, it's like 95% Stroll. Ericsson. I like that, Tom. I like that. I agree. I think we saw a lot of battles into that first corner. Perez Ocon, which we'll get onto in a minute. Raikkonen and Sainz, which we'll get onto in a minute. As you can see, there. Look, I think Stroll was very rusty. You could tell he'd had a couple of weeks off. Obviously, the incident with Verstappen at the same corner. And then Lando. I think Stroll was ahead of Lando, but Stroll must have known that he wasn't fully past Lando and he had to give him room, had to give him space and go out wide if need be. Just fucked his own race and Lando's at that rate and turned in. I think it was Stroll's fault. And again, a committee of FIA accredited individuals. Not that I'm saying that I think they're always right, but ultimately they've got all these angles and they've got all these kind of views that we don't have. And the consensus as well from everyone is that it was Stroll's fault. Do I think Stroll can't catch a break more because a lot of people don't like him? Yes, but do I think that makes this any less his fault? No. Definitely Stroll's fault. Which is a shame because Lando looked like he was having a solid enough race. And Stroll as well. Like, considering he had pretty poor qualifying, I feel like he would have comfortably finished top 10. Shame for both of them, really. And Lando dropped the old C-bomb. Again, look, I think, honestly, anyone criticising... I understand like people criticising Verstappen a bit more for what he said because it's not the same using the language that Verstappen used versus what Lando used. But Lando did apologise on the radio afterwards, which, to be honest, like I don't think he needed to do because he just called him he just called him a swear, like a standard swear, 2 standard swears actually. Nothing worse than I say on my Twitch streams. But also, like, come on, again, like exactly what Lando said and exactly what Sebastian said. All those years, I always reference to the press conference when a journo tries to pull up Lewis on something he said about another driver when they had a coming together. And like Sebastian's just like, hang on a minute. We're like putting our lives on the line, heat of the moment, racing, hard, focused, like athletes at the top of their game. You have a coming together. It's a very emotionally charged situation. I think it's an incredible... For anyone like criticising, overly going in on Lando, I understand a bit more. I understand more with Verstappen, especially that he wasn't prepared to acknowledge that what he said wasn't a particularly like cool thing to say. Well, it was a shit thing to say at the end of the day. But at the end of the day, like, I think that's an impossible standard to hold anyone to, that you expect that a Formula 1 driver in that situation... Trust me, I can guarantee you, if you mic'd up all of the drivers from back in the day, your Schumachers, your Sennas, your Fangios, your Clarks, they'd have said they'd have said shit like that all the time, right? Just because they're mic'd up, I don't think you can expect them. I think it's incredibly unfair to expect them to not just, like, be emotional, because that's what it is. They're athletes competing at the top of the game. But yeah. Anyway, on to the next screen. Lewis. I'll talk more like Lewis. Lewis, it was like Valtteri had a gap, and then all of a sudden there was no gap, and Lewis was right on his arse. Lewis's tyre management is clearly different gravy. I'm going to say it again. It just comes to me now. His tyre management's on point. Bottas is less so, and Lewis has got the pace. That's all it took for Bottas's tyres to fall away a little bit, and then Lewis was just able to... Ended up winning by like 25 seconds. It wasn't even close in the end. And he had cramp as well. Yeah, I know. So I've got cramp. Fastest lap. Maybe that's the secret. I mean, look, obviously, again, as fuel's burnt off, as the race goes on, there's less wear on the tyres. The lap times get quicker. And I'm sure Lewis did have a bit of cramp. But look, he knows what he's doing. He's been doing this for a long time now, Lewis. He's 35 years of age, you know? He's not a newbie to this sport anymore. He knows how to manage his body and how to deliver these results. And I think that just shows I think on one lap pace, Valtteri is very close to Lewis. I think hot lapping straight up, Valtteri can get close. I still think Lewis is better. But there's been instances where Valtteri's got poles and, you know, it's not like it's been a clean sweep. I feel like in quali, it's been less of a clean sweep than the races tend to be. Yes, Valtteri has won races, of course, but I think Lewis is more dominant in races than Valtteri, than he is in qualifying. But as well, I feel like Lewis just holds a bit back, you know, in practice and in Q1 and Q2. He just, because he knows he doesn't need to. He can just, you know, relax a bit more, just get his eye in. Oh, maybe I can just test a little bit, and then Q3, boom, race. Boom. I think a lot of us, I think we all, myself included, like, we'll look back on these years of Lewis and just like when I'm like 80, I'll be like, God, remember them days when Lewis was absolutely smashing it and just dominant. He's quality. Anyway, little talk about the old battles that weren't during the first corner, not just the first corner. Raikkonen, Sainz, Ocon, Perez. Throwback Ocon, Perez to the Racing Point days, Force India days, shall I say, and they were teammates, taking each other out at every given opportunity. But that Raikkonen cut back on Sainz, like Kimi, it wasn't just a first lap performance from Kimi. That was very impressive with Carlos Sainz. Both of them as well. Like all these four deserve accolades for that, because that was great racing. Like, that's what we want to see. We don't see that often enough, you know. And again, there were times where the race calmed down a little bit. And again, you can expect that. It can't be 100% drama the whole time. But those periods of chill were filled with these little battles, dotted around. And you had Gasly, Perez as well at the end. Which we'll talk about in a minute, because you can see that's the next down on the list. But no, my calves have gone. I like that. But yeah, I just think, again, shout out to Portimao for that as well. Shout out to Portimao, like it's a person. What am I talking about? Twat. But yeah, I think the track deserves credit and the drivers deserve credit for that as well. I think Ocon, shout out Ocon as well, actually. I think he had a good performance yesterday. He managed to make the medium tyres last till about lap 45 or something ridiculous. So shout out for Ocon, because he's been under quite a bit of pressure as well, scrutiny. Again, I think having a teammate who's so on their job, like Ricciardo is. I know he finished behind him, and it wasn't an amazing race for Ricciardo this at all. But over the course of the season, Ricciardo is fourth in the constructors, in the drivers' title at the minute. But yeah, I think shout out Ocon. I think he had a solid race. But yeah, Gasly, Perez almost coming together. That was squeaky bum time. My one critique of Perez is that this is not the first time this kind of thing's happened where he's been a bit too aggressive on the close on Gasly as well. Remember at Spa earlier this year when Perez squeezed Gasly into the wall and cover your ears if you don't like swearing. Fuck me, that was close. It was like, oh mate, it was millimetres either sides when Perez squeezed Gasly going up Radion, Eau Rouge, whatever it's called. And again, Perez kind of closed the door very late. It was just on the edge of being... If it had been any later, there would have been a crash and it had taken both out, which would have been a massive shame because they both had really strong races. That's my only critique of Perez. He's sometimes a bit too aggressive. He's got the pace, 100%. He's got the experience. Most of the time, he's cool. It's fine. But it's radio actually. It's Tommy in the chat. Yeah, that's the only thing. Perez can be a bit dirty at times. Fortunately, they were both all right. And again, I think but again, that kind of took away from me giving Perez driver of the day because again, I just think that was a bit naughty. But all in all, good fun. And Gasly got past because Gasly's quality. So actually, I'll talk a bit about Gasly now. So again, if I go back to my results, that's not the results, that's main screen. Hello. Driver of the day, Gasly. Now, hang on, let me just get back to the, yeah. Why have I put Gasly as driver of the day? Qualified in Q3, P9. By Gasly standards, that's okay. By an AlphaTauri standards, we've got to remember, right, that AlphaTauri is arguably the 6th fastest. Probably now, I would comfortably say now it's the 7th fastest car on the grid. Do you agree? Because it's behind Red Bull and Mercedes. It's behind the McLaren, the Renault, and the Racing Point, if you ask me. And I think now, with the steps that Ferrari have made, I think the Ferrari is a quicker car now. I don't think you could have maybe said that a few weeks ago, but I think Ferrari have made steps forward, if you ask me. Also, thank you, Nicholas Blander, joining Friends of Tomo. Appreciate it, Mal. Pow. Thank you. Sorry, the AlphaTauri is not faster than the McLaren. Absolutely not. No, it's just not. It's not. I think comfortably now, the AlphaTauri is the 7th fastest car on the grid. I think all things considered right now, I think that is the 7th fastest car on the grid. Because you've got to look at Kvyat's results. How often does Kvyat get into the top 10? And I think Kvyat's a solid driver. I don't think he's a bad driver at all. But you look at where, Ocon Ricardo, where Perez Stroll, where Norris Sainz, where they typically finish, right? They're typically knocking on the door of the top 10. Way more than Kvyat is. And I think that, well, that's just my opinion on it. Whatever. For him to get the 7th fastest car, so again, you look at, then you look at, all right, so say it's the 7th fastest car. Every team's got 2 drivers. So Gasly is, if it all finished in that order of whoever's got the fastest car, right, in that order, Gasly would be P13 or 14 every week. Because it's the 7th fastest car, 2 drivers, right? So 6 teams ahead of him with 2 drivers each. Am I doing that maths right? Oh, no, he'd be 14th, 15th every week, should I say. Obviously, I know that's not the case. But you look at where Pierre's operating, the results that he's put in this year, the amount of top 6s he's managed to get, and obviously that win, he's massively outperforming, if you ask me, the equipment, just like I think Verstappen is, just like Leclerc is. But I think Gasly, again, particularly with how the redemption from last year, it's so impressive to me. And his racecraft's great, and he's got great pace. He very rarely gets into incidents. I know he got sandwiched at Mugello, which I don't think was his fault. Did I have it right first time? 13, 14, there you go. For me, Pierre's driver of the day, driver of the year so far for me. Again, plenty of other people up there. Of course, Lewis, Verstappen, Charles. But for me, Pierre Gasly just massively outperforming the equipment in front of him and taking a car that, the AlphaTauri is an easier car to drive. I think, Pierre said that. Alex has said that. Red Bull are very open about that. Yet he's still consistently much quicker than Kvyat. And Kvyat's not a bad driver. I just think Pierre Gasly's quality. Different gravy. All right, here we go, everyone. What everyone's been waiting for. Let's talk about Alex Albon, because everyone won't shut up about Alex. Alex, honestly. Did everyone see my tweet before the race? Did everyone see my... Here we go. Go on, everyone get all their thoughts and opinions out in the chat, all right? Get it out your system, everyone. Get it out. I tweeted before because obviously I hit 100k at the weekend. West Ham didn't lose against City. So I was like, come on, Alex, get a good result. Then that's all 3 boxes ticked of a perfect sporting weekend. F's in chat for me. Yep, there we go. He really needed a good result, didn't he, Alex? He really didn't. He really needed a good result. He couldn't. He was so... That first lap was so bad. So bad. Those... He just couldn't hook. You could see, like, he had as bad a first lap as Lewis did. The difference was that because Alex is already lower than he should be in qualifying, he just gets swallowed up by everyone left, right and centre. And then obviously the race settled down and he wasn't able to make the moves. Like, I think most of the time he's been able to make the moves through the pack. I know he was saying in the post-race after that last corner was a particular weak spot. He felt particularly uncomfortable coming out that last corner, which is why, because he was just stuck behind Kimi for so long. He couldn't get past Kimi, you know? It was just really disappointing. Obviously, I'm a huge Alex Albon fan, and also one thing I got, like, so I critique Alex, and then people will message me saying, like, I'll get a lot of people who've tweeted me saying, I thought you were an Alex fan. It's like, yes, I'm an Alex fan, but that doesn't mean I'm never gonna say any critique or any. I can't own the fact that he's, like, making mistakes and not driving well at the moment. That's like me being a West Ham fan and saying, oh, well, yeah, but we're the best team in the world. We're just always unlucky. Like, we're actually the best. There's nothing bad to say about West Ham because we're actually... Like, yeah, that's just a pointless thing to say. I think, honestly, right now, and again, I'm gonna equate this to football, you know. I think that there's been times as a West Ham fan where I would rather see us get relegated and actually battle and fight near the top of a competitive league than just hold on every year and get smashed pretty much every week, but just hold on by the skin of our teeth in the Premier League, right? As a fan, at times it's just like, it just gets too much. I 100% believe, and I was watching the Christian Horner interview afterwards, and he was talking, and obviously he was asked about Alex, and they'd had a poor race, and he was saying about the data that they've got on the drivers, and how Christian believes that, you know, if the shoe was on the other foot, you know, Albon would be doing very well in AlphaTauri, and Gasly would be performing poorly in Red Bull because the car's difficult to drive, blah, blah, blah. We've got a situation where, again, when Gasly was in that Red Bull and performing, and I think it's very important to acknowledge the past and what's happened, and the fact that Pierre was performing as bad as Alex is right now. Now, I think Alex's highs in Red Bull have been higher than Gasly's highs Thank you, Still Our Rise, for the $2 from Detroit, mate. Thank you, pal. Appreciate that. Much love. Never been to Detroit, but I love Chicago. Been to Chicago once. You look at the results, and you look at the splits in qualifying and all that kind of stuff. The parallels are ridiculous between Gasly last year and Alex this year. Alex's highs have been higher than Pierre's highs, which I think is part of why Red Bull, I think, will stick with him for the rest of the year. I think the bigger reason is that there is very little risk of them getting caught in as second in the constructors. Whereas last year, they had a chance, a long shot chance, but they still had a chance to catch Ferrari, potentially. Didn't happen in the end. I think, and I'm looking at the situation as objectively as I can. I think people who were saying like Alex isn't good enough for F1. Like, were you saying like genuinely to anyone who thinks Alex isn't good enough for F1? Were you saying that about Gasly last year in Red Bull because he was doing as bad as Alex is now? 100%. 100%. Look at the numbers. Look at the results. Look at the facts. Look at the absolute facts. Both really poor in that seat. I think Alex's highs again, Interlagos last year, that absolutely slapping move he pulled out on Vettel, got punted by Lewis. Alex should have 3 podiums to his name. Yes, he's done a lot more races than Pierre, but again, no one was complaining at the end of last year that Alex was getting that seat above Pierre. Yes, Alex's race pace and not so much less race pace. His qualifying pace was still pretty much similar kind of gap as Gasly's was, but he was converting those results and he was confident. If you go again, Interlagos last year, that move that Alex pulled on Vettel, if Alex tries that move now, he's crashing into him or it's not working because he's not got confidence. And it's the same for Pierre. You look at how low Pierre was, and people were calling for Pierre's head and saying he's not good enough for F1. And look at him this year. He's won a race. I just think if you ask me, I think it's very short-sighted to say that he's not good enough for F1, even though his highs at Red Bull have been higher than Pierre's highs. You go back to even like Toro Rosso last year, so his rookie season. And remember, Alex at Red Bull last year, where his last races, every single race he raced in, he was P6 minimum over like 6 races. I can't even remember. Which Pierre just wasn't delivering that consistency. I think it's not even controversial to say that Alex did better in Red Bull last year than Pierre did in Red Bull last year, and it was Alex's rookie season. But again, Pierre Gasly is my driver of the year. Do I think Gasly's a better driver than Albon? Yes, I do. I think right now Gasly is a much better driver than Alex Albon. 100%. 100%. Of course he is. Look at the results. How could I say otherwise? It's ridiculous. But what I'm saying is, the way that Pierre's rebounded and the fact that Pierre and Alex both performed well in the Toro Rosso before they went to Red Bull. What I think will happen, and what honestly, the longer this goes on, and the analogy I use about I'd rather see West, and I think I don't think they'll drop Alex before the end of the year because I think Hülkenberg will get that seat. Actually, no, not because I think Hülkenberg will get that seat, because obviously Hülkenberg's not tied to a team at the minute. I think, and I hope, I pray that Alex turns it around for the next 5 races. I said that last week, and he had a shocker this weekend. Do I believe, if I had to bet on it, I wouldn't, because do I actually believe that's going to happen? I don't think I do, to be honest. I don't have any. Alex seems really low on confidence. He's had 2 really poor races back to back. There's no objective reasoning for me to believe that that's going to happen, but I hope and pray and really hope that he can pull himself out of this hole and turn it around, because I think he's got it in him in the same way that Pierre Gasly had it in him. even when he was really struggling at Red Bull. He clearly had it in him because he went back to Toro Rosso / AlphaTauri, and he's now smashing it, killing it, doing an unreal job. And it goes to show that even if the ceiling of that Red Bull is higher than the AlphaTauri, if you've got a driver who's really confident and comfortable, not in just in the car, but in the team around him as well, and in the whole thing, then that's more important. That's more important at the end of the day, because ultimately the gaps between these cars are still, yes, it's accentuated over the course of a 66 lap race like yesterday, but the margins per lap are still very, very small, and it obviously adds up over time. So I think, again, what I obviously want to happen is Alex to smash it these last few races and at least give Red Bull something to think about, that he really has it in him. Because I think he has it in him. I think Red Bull think he has it in him. But ultimately, and I can't blame Red Bull, like, if Alex isn't able to turn it around, where's he going to get this confidence from? Like, if he's not confident in the car, even if he does have it in him, then taking him out, I think, is the right decision. And again, it's the same with Pierre Gasly. That situation didn't look like it was going to change anytime soon. It didn't look like he was going to turn that around. And again, obviously, they wanted to test out Alex, and the circumstances are slightly different. I think if Alex doesn't turn it around, which if I had to bet, this will happen, I think Alex replaces Kvyat at AlphaTauri. Because, again, I think they've got data on both drivers. I think Alex has more potential than Kvyat. I don't think Kvyat's going to retain that seat. You look at the gap most weekends between Gasly and Kvyat is very big, and Kvyat's had his opportunity, had his time, and is performing. I think there's nothing to lose for them to put Alex in AlphaTauri alongside Pierre, give Tsunoda another year in F2, put Hülkenberg in at Red Bull. I think it will be. Honestly, I feel like part of me, like an increasing part of me, wants that to happen, because again, I'd rather see Alex in a lower team but performing better in a car he's more comfortable in, and putting him straight up against Pierre Gasly. Because I think Gasly's quality. I would love to see Alex in direct comparison battle with him. I think it would be closer than a lot of people are thinking. And then Hülkenberg comes in. Hülkenberg's a solid pair of hands. It says a lot, right? Stroll had 2 weeks off, essentially, Stroll. He had the COVID test, and then he immediately crashed into race before that. And he really struggled. Now, Stroll, I think, is good enough to be an F1, but I don't think he's a top-tier driver by any stretch of the imagination. The fact that Nico has been able to come in after being so long out, like months out, and immediately perform better than Stroll did this weekend, shows how good Nico is. And I would be fascinated. I would be so interested to see if Nico Hülkenberg, a proven, very good Formula One driver, he was top of F1.5 for a significant part of his career. I would be fascinated to see him come in and what that gap is like to Max. Because I think that will really show, like, I think it will definitely be closer than the gap between Alex and Max and the gap between Pierre and Max. Definitely. Because Nico's a much more experienced driver, and he's got a lot of talent, a lot of ability. And also he's got I think he's got a bit less pressure on him as well. I think the pressure of that seat came with Pierre and Alex both being very young drivers, getting a big opportunity in a very tricky car. And yeah, I think that's what should happen. I think Albon I really hope for Alex that he can turn it around, but I'd rather see him performing well in an AlphaTauri, which I think he would perform well in an AlphaTauri, than really struggling and being dragged through the mud every single weekend. Like, it's not. I understand how upset Seb fans get when people drag Sebastian and say he's not got it, he's not good enough. Like, it's not nice to hear, you know what I mean? Like, when your favourite driver, someone you believe in, someone you support, is not performing and people are dragging him and saying he's not good enough. Like, it's not nice. It's not nice to hear, but you got to kind of suck it up and get on with it, because ultimately that's just... People are entitled to their opinion. I don't think anyone's entitled to not say what they feel, but I just think looking at objectively as possible at the stats, yeah, I think that's what should happen. But anyway, I think that's enough about Alex. I did end up talking about that for a long time. And I want to close off because, of course, it's easy to, you know, oh, Lewis is just dominant, it's boring because he's winning all the time. Lewis is now the most successful Formula One driver of all time. Yes, of course, they have more races now, so the likes of Fangio and Clark and a lot of other, you know, incredible drivers from the history of the sport don't have as many wins, okay? I understand there's more races, but look, it's an amazing achievement to keep it going for as long as he has. And Lewis could, like, if he wanted to, Lewis could easily go for another... He could easily go at, I think, the top of his game for another 3, maybe 4 years. He takes care of his body, Lewis. You know, he knows how to condition and the physical aspects of it. I think... What I think will happen, I think he'll win this driver's title. He'll win one more, whether that's next year or the year after. And then he'll get out after 1 year with the new regs. Because I think next year or the year after, Lewis is going to win one of those titles. I'm pretty confident of that. I think he'll want to try out the new regulations, and then he will retire. I definitely think he'll get to number 8. That's the main thing I'm thinking. He'll get to number 8 so that he's top of that pecking order. Because, hey, listen, if I was in his position, I would. I want to be remembered for the most drivers' titles of all time. I want every record. I don't want to be joint. Come on, he's a competitor. I think he'll get that 8th driver's title, and then he'll chuck it in. Unless it's next year, in which case he'll do 1 year in the new regulations. Maybe win that title, maybe make it 9, and then he'll retire. He's got his Extreme E stuff, he's got his fashion stuff, he's got a lot of... I could see him doing a lot of charity work and a lot of, like, you know... He's got a lot of things outside of racing that he's passionate about. Thank you, Guy, for the 199, mate. Appreciate it. I'm happy to see you've still got Villa 7, Liverpool 2 as your profile picture, by the way. Big 10, maybe. I don't know, but I don't know if... I think he could if he wanted to, but I don't know if he'll actually want to do that. Like, I don't... What's the motivation for him to do that? But yeah, Lewis is sick. Hello, Hannah.
Hello.
Hannah's decided to come in right at the end of the stream and disrupt me. How you doing?
Good, how are you?
Do you think Lewis is the best of all time?
I mean, yeah.
You going to come on the stream? Do you want to see Minton, actually? Now that Hannah's come in, Minton's here. Come here. Now, don't hide under... He's gone under the sofa.
Oh. Come back. Go on. Minton.
He's literally full on under the... There we go. You are on the stream, that's it.
Yeah, come on.
Yeah. But yeah, there we go,
My
everyone.
little mole.
I think I'm done now because Hannah's come in. So, yeah, thank you everyone for watching. Hopefully next weekend will be good. Imola should be banging. So, we haven't seen Imola for a long time. So, do a flip. Thank you everyone for watching. So many of you here as well. I appreciate all the support. Thank you, honestly, so much. Nicholas, thank you for the 5 Aussie dollars, mate. You're the thing allowing me to do an essay at midnight due tomorrow. Oh, sorry. Don't give me money then. Do the essay. Come on. You can do it. Right. I'm out, anyone. So I'll see you soon. Maybe sooner than you think. That sounded a bit weird. Bye, everyone.